Hello, 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 and welcome to Project Possible with me, Rich Leigh. Today's guest is Pete Cohen. Some of you might know him as GMTV's life coach, the resident life coach for 13 years, dubbed the People's Coach. For more than 30 years, Pete has helped people change the way they think. I went to Pete to speak to him about his new documentary, Hannah's Story. Pete's wife, Hannah, was diagnosed with an aggressive brain tumour in 2011. What followed was more than a decade of love, fear, hope, treatment, uncertainty, and resilience. After Hannah's death, Pete turned years of footage into the award-winning documentary, Hannah's Story. I went to speak to him about Hannah, about grief, love, and his work around stopping and thinking. That's his whole thing, is stop and think. Stop rushing into ideas, stop rushing into decisions, stop and think. But somewhere in the middle of this, Pete, who's also a podcaster, I should say, somewhere in the middle of all this, the interview changed and he kind of turned things back on me a little bit. I've not really had that happen before, but I guess that's what you get when you speak to somebody that for a living helps people change the way that they think and live. He asked me about my brother Jordan, who, as many of you might know, took his own life last year. And what followed was, something pretty personal, pretty beautiful. I'm a big one for it being about the guests and not having it turned around on me, but Pete made that almost impossible. But I love him for it anyway. And maybe there were questions that needed to be asked and things I needed to come away with. There are plenty of episodes that aren't about loss and grief and love and all of those things. If you want to go and find those, tons of amazing people that have done incredible things. So if all of that sounds a little bit like, do you know what? That's not for me. That's okay. But perhaps this is, perhaps you're in the middle of loss, grief, understanding certain more difficult parts of life right now, then perhaps this is exactly the conversation for you. We do get into forgiveness, personal agency, and what it means to keep living. Without further ado, I bring to you my conversation with Pete Cohen. Enjoy. Pete, lovely to meet you. Properly. We've been speaking a little while. Thank you so much for allowing me into your lovely house, adorned as it is by superheroes.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, they're protecting me. Everyone needs a protector. Yeah, and I love superheroes. So as a child, the word hero comes from the Greek word meaning heros, which is the protector. So superheroes really, if you think about what they do, they're protectors. And everyone needs people to protect them, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, without getting too deep too quickly, is that kind of what you felt like you were falling with Hannah?
Yeah, I think maybe I didn't realise that's what I was doing, but I was definitely her protector, yeah.
I will have introduced you already, but I watched Hannah's Story yesterday. Everybody go to, it's Hannah's Story.
Teamhannah.com.
Teamhannah.com. Everybody go to teamhannah.com, put in your email address. The story, the film's there. It's 50 minutes long. Suffice to say, I cried. I think most people watching it probably will.
Yeah.
It's raw. It's powerful. It's won awards. It had its premiere a couple of weeks ago.
Last Thursday.
Last Thursday. How was that?
Yeah, it was very surreal. I made a film and I didn't make it because I wanted to have a premiere of it. I made a film because it was something I felt I had to do when my wife passed away. My coach said to me, you need to find a way to celebrate in your suffering. I didn't know what that meant. And I thought about it. How do I celebrate suffering? I mean, how does anyone do that? And then one morning in this house, I woke up and realized I know what I've got to do. We had loads of footage that I had taken since 2011 when she was first diagnosed. I just thought I've got to put this all together, but put it together for me first and foremost, and then to share with friends and family. And then I shared it with a few other people. And then one of them said, put it into some film festivals. Next thing I know, it's won 11 film festivals around the world. And it's taken on a life of its own, which is kind of crazy, but also beautiful.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's kind of hitting people so hard?
I think people love really good stories. And that's why we watch movies. I was talking to someone the other day about, have you ever seen a film that's really moved you? Mm-hmm. I've seen a few.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, loads. Yeah.
But they don't move me for very long. I don't know why that is. Even stories that are real. I think, what film have I ever watched that still moves me to this day? Star Wars, but that's not real. I mean,
there is a Darth Vader right behind
I know,
you.
right behind you.
I'm being stared at by Darth Vader.
Yeah, there is a kind of a, I don't know, a 2 foot long high Darth Vader. I saw that in 1977. That blew me away in terms of the idea of the Force and you know, the Force for good, the Force for evil. But, you know, I don't know. Have you ever seen a film that still moves you to this day, that when you think about it, you think, God, that film changed my life?
Changed my life? No, but definitely films that move me and give me a profound sense of humanity. Shawshank. The Truman Show. The Truman Show moves me profoundly. You know, that idea of, you know, we are nothing and nobody, but also somebody at the same time.
So it's interesting when we start talking about the films, for me, we bring the greatness of the film or the feeling that we took away from the film. Shawshank, for me, is about friendship, about in the darkest of times, and then the fact that they both get out and they end up seeing each other again. The Truman Show is amazing, right? That whole thing for me about you're just in a mad world and you need to wake up to the reality of the world that you're in. So, you know, films do move us, and I suppose in putting this film out there, Hannah's story, and I think this has already started to happen. A number of people have watched it, and it has already been a defining moment in people's lives where perhaps their life will never be the same because of Hannah. And even before we made a film, I know people who I've been very close to, who they took Hannah's death as a way of transforming their life, which is pretty amazing.
It's powerful, isn't it?
It's very powerful. Like, you know that. I mean, you know that firsthand, right? You losing your brother, as challenging and as difficult as that still is to this day, I would imagine you've still chosen to, I'm not going to let this ruin me. I'm going to let this define me in a way that's still being worked out.
I think that's the thing, and I think that's why I was really interested to talk to you. You spent your life helping people better themselves, I think is a fair way of putting it. And I'm in that process still right now. I'm in that kind of, you know, I've been in that purgatorial place where you're like, okay, I don't know which way's up or down. Maybe I'm still falling. And I think I was, until you do hit that rock bottom, until you do get to that point, and then you look up and you see the blooded rocks along the way. You think, but I can also see a handhold. I can also see where I can put my foot. I can climb that. And that's kind of where I am now, if that makes any sense. But I want to talk about the film tons. I want to talk about you, what you've done. But before we do, let's start with Hannah, not just the film, but who she is. But so before the books, the coaching, all that stuff. Who was Hannah?
Wow, that's a big question, and that makes me hugely emotional because you're asking me who she was. That's a really interesting question, because I was thinking about that this morning, because I'm reviewing conversations I had with my coach 3 years ago, and in the conversation that I played back that I had 3 years ago, it was a podcast I was doing myself, and I was crying.
And you're releasing them also.
I'm re-releasing. I mean, it's a crazy story, but it's a beautiful story. But I was listening back to a conversation I had 3 years ago, and I'm crying in this podcast. And the reason I'm crying is because it's probably 5 months after Hannah died, and I realized this big epiphany around, in your life, where you are, it's not who you are. Where you are is circumstantial. So where I am, I was a widower. Is that who I am? No, I'm more than a widower. So this whole concept to stop and to think about, who am I really? And what has this crazy situation of my wife passing away, way before what some people would say her time. But what I realized is that who she was, I met her in 2010. I believe she found out who she was through having cancer, and she found out she was a quilter. So you can see there's a Union Jack, but underneath that,
there's a pillow right there.
That pillow was my dad's shirt. So my dad died in 2018, my mum died in 21, and Hannah died in 23. Hannah made a cushion out of the shirt of my father, who passed away. Hannah started making quilts. Before we met me, she worked in the spa industry. She was very accomplished and kind of enjoyed what she did. But that wasn't who she was. Who she was a creator. And she could make things, and she made these most incredible quilts for people. So who was she? Well, she was an incredible, loving, kind, beautiful, funny But she was a creator. She was really in her element when she was in this house. She had this big machine called a long arm quilting machine where she was making things.
There's a scene in the film.
Yeah,
you
you see that.
Yeah.
And I also got very upset because when I was listening to that podcast recorded 3 years ago, I was waiting for a delivery to come. I'm a massive Michael Jordan fan. I have every shirt that Michael Jordan wore. And I spoke to Hannah and said, look, these shirts are doing nothing. And, they're just in a drawer, all these original shirts. I said, why don't we just make them into a quilt? And that was the last job that she started. She couldn't finish it. So she cut all the shirts up, ready to be quilted. And that day I recorded it, I was waiting for the quilt to arrive. I'll show it to you before we leave. Yeah. So, who was she? She was just the most incredible, loving, kind human being who I'm so grateful that she was in my life for 13 years. Again, Michael Jordan said the same thing. When Jordan's father was murdered, Jordan said, I was lucky. I had this man in my life for 32 years. I think we all come into this world for a reason and a season. And that season, just like your brother, he came into your life.
Also called Jordan, by the way.
Really?
I named him. So I was 9-10 years old.
Why did you call him Jordan?
Michael Jordan.
So do you think that that's random, or do you think that there's something else that's going on here?
I mean, obviously he was the preeminent athlete at the time in US sport. Hugely popular culturally. Yet he was born premature, 3 months premature. Very touch and go. Spent his So my mum was like, Christ, they've just said we need to name him. I don't know. I don't know what we're naming him. And I went, well, I was like, Jordan. Just thinking,
Yeah.
and she's like, yep, done. So throughout his whole life, I think it was quite funny that he knew that his brother, had a hand in his name, something of a hand in his name. Obviously, she could have vetoed it, but
our names aren't who we are. Our names are given to us.
Sure.
We're more than our names. But I would imagine that name that you gave him really was who he was, because there must have been something Jordan-like about him.
There was, absolutely. And I mean, in my gym now, a gym still with his footprints in it that's prevented me from using it. I have to go and use another gym. But there's a picture that he had in his bedroom when he passed of, you've probably seen it, that there's a shot and everybody else is blacked out. It's just Jordan, as in Michael Jordan, just him in his red, 23 shirt. And so that hangs in my gym very proudly, as obviously not just a reminder, everything, in grief, everything reminds you of that person, so.
Well, grief is one of the most fascinating experiences to have as a human being. I mean, maybe we can talk about that. But what I will say to you is that to me, there's a sign there. I don't know what the sign is. We met through a mutual friend, right?
Yeah.
But I'd just say there's another connection there. And you could say that's just chance, it's just random. I would say, no, that's somewhere or something saying there's a connection here, but that's deeper than just this conversation. So I don't know what that is, but I know that it's there. I'm old enough now to know, okay, you could just say that's a coincidence. I'd say, no, that's not a coincidence. That's a connection.
When you think about the small things, what are the small things you miss about Hannah?
Well, she was the easiest person to make laugh. She was just the most amazing friend. I really wish that I had made the most of when she was here, because I didn't. I've lived most of my life in fear. From a very young age, I was frightened of my parents dying. I was obviously I wasn't frightened of Hannah dying when I met her, but I knew that something wasn't quite right, but I didn't know what. I couldn't put my finger on it. But then after being with her for a year, and she had this massive seizure in my parents' house and given 18 months to live, obviously the fear response kicked in. My being busy disposition just what took on a life of its own, because I'm very resourceful. I believe there's an answer to everything. And I know through my endeavours that I did find a treatment that basically saved her life, not just once, but twice.
And that was Dr. Basinski.
Dr. Basinski, yeah. Huge amounts of controversy about him.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because his work is all about peptides, and now you talk about peptides.
Everybody's talking about peptides.
Everyone's talking about them. It's like, Mavericks do get a really hard time in the beginning. I mean, he was vilified he was taken to court by the FDA, he was taken to court by the Texas Medical Board. And that's why one of the reasons I filmed. Because when we went to America, not only did we need £250,000, I knew that he was being taken to court. And if he'd been convicted, I thought, well, what happens if she's on this treatment and he's convicted? So I'm filming everything.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, Basinski's still alive. He's in his 80s. Amazing man. Amazing man.
You spoke to him recently?
I invited him to the premiere. He said he was going to come, but he ended up not coming. I mean, he's in his,
as you say,
mid-80s now.
Yeah. It strikes me when I was watching it. Have you watched Afterlife by Ricky Gervais?
Yeah.
It strikes me that when I was watching that, I thought, nobody's got this much footage of their partner. But you did. Yeah. And that was the reason, because you thought to document it was important. You might use it in some way in the future, but you weren't quite sure how.
No. So originally, the reason to film was, think about this, right? So this was in 2011. We'd been together a year. It's funny we're sitting around this table. This table was my parents' table. Right? And this was in their house. And Hannah had this seizure in my house and my parents' house, and we ended up staying there. We both had work. We both gave up our work. But we got a whole lot of people to come around, and we started Team Hannah. And this table probably had about 13 people around it. And we thought, right, we need to raise 250,000. Yeah. So we had to put myself out there in front of I didn't mind putting myself in front of the camera, but Hannah and I sat on a bench and we'd say, hey, this is Team Hannah. This is where we are. We need money. Please help. And we had a massive following. We had people, guy got 100 tattoos on his back, people cycling from John O'Groats to Land's End. It was a community thing. It was out on Facebook. People were following the story. So we went to America and again carried on filming. And then there was other things going on around the controversy. I thought when I came back, why don't we make this into a film? So I actually made it into a film in 2012 called Hannah's Anecdote. Because anecdotally, people said this is anecdotal evidence that she's overcoming, and because she got better, we got married. But even after that film came out in 2012, and it was for everyone that was following us, she was still having scans every 6 months, then every year. So it was like, we have to put the camera on again. It's terrible to just think we've raised all this money and not continue to share the story with people. That's not something I felt comfortable doing, and I felt everyone had a right to know what was going on. So we got married. Some of that was filmed. Hannah started a new career. And there was a guy that used to be on This Morning TV program, a guy called John Scott, who used to do fashion. He was on a thing called Sewing Quarter, and he contacted me. It's interesting why he contacted me, but that's another story. Basically, he thought I was gay, so...
Flattered, but...
Well, the thing is that he didn't know that Hannah absolutely loved him and would watch him every week on Sewing Quarter. So I get this message, I shout, Hannah! Hannah! And she thinks I've had a heart attack, and it was that John Scott had sent me a friend request. John ended up mentoring Hannah and came and filmed her for something he was doing, and he couldn't believe the quality of her work because she was self-taught. Yeah. And so there was all this footage. And then when she got sick again in 2021, again, we needed to raise money to stop work. So again, it's like we're showing the story again. So it was almost, I don't know whether you've ever felt compelled to do something. Like, you're obviously compelled to do this podcast, right? You've been, how many episodes? 88?
82 have been released. I've recorded about 100.
Yeah.
It doesn't accidentally happen, does it?
Well, obviously it's a thing. I've got to do this, even though you don't necessarally know where it might be going. 100%. I've got to do this.
Any creative endeavor, I think you create and then you throw it out there, and then what it is will be. And
that's very philosophical, isn't it? To put something out there and go, well, I'm just going to see what happens. I'm not controlling.
It's not yours anymore.
Well, that's where I feel with making this film. I mean, it was like I'm putting it out there, and people are saying, "What are you doing next?" I said, "I don't know. I haven't really got a plan. Why not?"
Do you see yourself as a filmmaker? Is that something in your future?
Well, I've always made films, sure. But do I want to make another film? Yeah. No. All I want to do is I want to share what life has taught me about slowing down, thinking more clearly, and being more intentional. Yeah. I want to share that with the world. Where that goes, I don't have any control over that. But that's That's my kind of mission, if you like.
Can I just, on the Afterlife parallel, when you were watching it, when did you watch it?
Hannah was alive.
Hannah was still
I don't
alive.
know whether we watched the last series. Maybe we did watch all of them.
How did it feel watching that? Was it just so on the bloody nose?
Well, I think Hannah really thought she was going to continue to live. I mean, people don't realise is that this is where it's just remarkable. 2011 diagnosed, started this treatment, on it for 18 months, made a miraculous recovery. We got married. She still had seizures occasionally, and that was all the way through till 2021 when she had another seizure. And what they don't tell you about when you have radiation on the brain is you're more than likely going to have cancer again, because radiotherapy is carcinogenic and it can't escape in the brain.
Right. So
it was no surprise, but this time it was much more severe, and I almost gave up. But a slight aside to that, one of the things she did love was Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember the last series, she was desperately trying to watch it, even in the hospice. Both her eyes became permanently closed, and she was still trying to open her eye to watch this beautiful story. I mean, Ted Lasso is pretty amazing, right? You've watched it, right?
Of course, I've watched all of it, yeah.
And yet all the characters are beautiful. There's all a kindness to all of them.
There really is.
I think Hannah related to that because she was so kind. But I suppose for me, Afterlife is sad, a bit too sad in terms of how he let his grief affect him. But the grief journey is different for everyone. I still get sad, as I'm sure you still get sad. I'm curious I'm curious to understand that. You see, your problem in interviewing me is, I've been podcasting for years and I want to ask you questions. but
ask away.
Yeah, because, the grief thing is such an interesting journey because grief affects everyone, isn't it? It doesn't have to be that someone's passed away.
That's the thing, and I say this, is everybody's impacted by grief in some way. It doesn't have to be tragic grief. And tragic grief, that kind of gut punch, this awful, awful thing's just happened. You'll forever remember the exact the exact spot you were stood in. That kind of tragic grief is grief is no less powerful. It doesn't have to be because somebody's taken their own life. It doesn't have to be because somebody's been murdered or something like that. For me, I'm still I'm not right in the depths of it. I certainly have been. Because I try not to talk too much about it on the podcast. Because
why not?
Because I'm very much I want the guests to be the
well, we can talk about our grief experiences.
And that's the thing here is I spoke to a lady called Dr. Susie Bennett. She's a preeminent male suicide researcher. 3.5 hour episode. Right at the beginning of it, I said, guys, if this isn't for you, that's okay. Go find another one.
It's for me.
This is for me. And likewise, I think we do share. We do share something that lots of people don't have. The thing with suicide that people forget is it doesn't just happen the moment that person decides to end their life. There's a build-up, very often, very commonly. And also there are ways that impacts a family and might otherwise stretch into the family. Doesn't just impact that person. Maybe that person's not the only person that is feeling that way, especially when you grow up in a way that's kind of laced with trauma or a less than ideal upbringing. So I identified with you in the moments where you're talking through and there's hope. When I was watching, that's what I identified with, was the moments where she's smiling and she's like, yay. Because I remember those moments with my brother where we felt like we were through it for a minute. And that you're never fully through. So
what's your brother's story then in terms of his mental health?
His mental health, again, without betraying too much, there was a part of himself that he hated.
Yeah.
Truly hated. And he wasn't fair to himself. He wasn't kind to himself. And again, you've heard of adverse childhood experiences, presumably.
Yeah.
We tick many of them. Many, many. And the sad reality is statistics prove that imprisonment, drug or alcohol addiction or disuse disorder, and suicide are likely results of a high number of ACEs. And each of those things has borne themselves out in some way, shape or form in the family. And it's generational. And for me, I was always so desperate to break that cycle. I knew very early on, very young, it's like I need to change things. Hence running at the business and, running in a first towards a profession, then the business, then success in that direction. So it almost feels, and this sounds so selfish and so like conceited, but I thought I'd done it. I thought I'd got up and out, and then this brought me crashing right back down. So it's like going up once and coming back down, then going up again. And I'm right back at the beginning again on that second descent. That's where it feels.
Yeah. Well, that's a thank you for sharing that.
No, not at all.
As someone who loves to listen to people's stories and to try and make sense of people's reality, only because it, in many cases, helps me with my own.
Exactly.
It sounds like you were looking to create a new story, a new history.
And I was desperate for him to be part of that, and he was, until he wasn't. And, so his suicide note to me said to the father I never had, because our father was, he's got his own struggles, and I'm not going to speak about his story, but, in and out of prison, often violent, those, not sometimes not the fairy tale father, right?
Yeah.
I was 9-10 years older than Jordan, as I said, and I was very paternal. So our relationship was slightly different in that sense. So it was me trying to show him how to be a good man without knowing how to be a good man, because when you grow up like we did, you don't have those examples around you. There might be a drug dealer there. There might be somebody who's been to prison for manslaughter there. These are true examples, by the way.
You've become a product of your environment.
Absolutely.
I met a guy the other day, and he was from a place called Bermondsey, a really rough estate, and grew up around all types of crime, abuse. And he said when he finally got out of there, it took him a couple of years to get used to the fact that he wasn't there.
It's weird.
And he'd be thinking that he needed to respond in a way how he was before. To recreate a new version of yourself is, you have to stop. And often it's the major stop moments in your life that make you kind of go, hang on a second, I'm going to change here. But it sounds like what you were doing is similar to what I was doing. Was I was externally looking for things to change in order for me to change, and it didn't matter how much success, how many books, how many, all that sort of.
It's so funny.
Didn't make any difference at all. It was all temporary.
Doesn't fill the wound.
But it makes sense to look for something, but you're just looking in the wrong place.
It's because it's what we're told, isn't it? It's, you find happiness and success. You find happiness in financial freedom. I think I do believe that. I do find not necessarily happiness, but you find comfort in financial freedom. If you've been poor, financial freedom is the best thing in the world. Security. It's like, am I going to be poor again? Hope not. That's a wonderful place to be. Because you've seen the debt collectors. You've seen what that's like when they come in and they take your things, because that's just the reality of life at that moment. Yet it doesn't have to be that way. And I was desperate for him, as I say. And that's the process of watching you support Hannah reminded me of the process of me and us, my family, trying to support Jordan through his troubles. The end is sadly the same. That person's no longer with us, and we've got to make sense of it.
What's the legacy of Jordan's, what impact has that had on you?
That is a very interesting question, and one that I'm trying to work out. Is
this podcast not part of that legacy?
It is. This podcast was always a love letter to my family, to say, look at these incredible people. Ellie Simmons was adopted day one because she was a dwarf. Her mum said, don't want you.
Yeah.
Look what she's done. Levi Roots, prison 3 times. What's he done with his life? He's turned
reggae sauce.
Reggae sauce, right? I mean, we all love that. It's in your fridge, I bet.
Yeah, it was. I need to get some more.
There you go. So you can pay me later, Levi. But there's these people that have come through. I've had some incredible people on recently. A man called Craig Wood, who was blown up at 18, a controlled IED. He was in Afghanistan, 18 years old. And controlled means he stepped on it. Whoever pressed the button saw him and went, that's the one. That's the guy I'm blowing up. And he lost 3 of his limbs. What's he done? What's he done since then? So these people, the incredible adversity, success, and perseverance through incredible adversity and challenges. And I think, as I said before we started speaking, that we've kind of become a society that is, we look at oppressed and oppressor. We look at victimhood, and almost that's an easier way to succeed. People put their arm around you. I think we're losing that kind of, okay, well, can I succeed despite this? So these are amazing people, and it was for me, not just for Jordan, for lots of people in my family. The podcast was is a love letter to say you can, personal agency and self-authorship is enormous for me. And at a young age, I knew that wasn't going to be my lot. I'm not going to live like this because I don't want to, and we don't have to. and I can choose. I can make a choice today, just like you can. People don't like the idea that you can choose to be happy. I think you can wake up and choose to be happier.
Yeah.
You know?
And how long ago did your Jordan pass away?
Jordan, it was February 7th last year, so 25th, 2020.
Wow, so it's really not that long ago.
No, Christ, no.
But what's interesting,
months.
if you told me a year ago, I'd say that is a long time, but I'm only saying that because I'm nearly 3.5 years down the road, but I still realise that it takes time. And why it takes time? Because everyone's grief journey is different, but what I do see for a lot of people, it takes a couple of years, you know?
Yeah, how many people told you that time's a healer? How many?
Yeah.
And at first you reject it, and at first you reject any idea, or certainly I did, of development, positivity, hope. Hope becomes something you want to push away. That notion of, well, I can't rebuild because he can't. And there's that weird guilt that comes with the idea of grief and, well, if he doesn't get to, then why do I deserve to? And you internalize all these things that just aren't true, and you tell yourself a story, but maybe it gets you to the place you need to get to. But I'm nowhere near through it. I recognise that. I recognise that when I'll be walking and without being too graphic, I'll see him in ways sometimes I want to see him, and sometimes ways I don't want to see him, as he certainly wouldn't want to be seen. But sometimes I'll be walking along and I remember the last moments where I was with him, put my hand on his shoulder, he was walking in front of me, and I can feel his shoulder right in front of me, and we're about the same height. So there's and I can feel the fleshy kind of, I'm like, I know where he was, and I can feel it now. Yeah. And you can probably, if you think, you can probably, what did hugging Hannah feel like? I bet you can feel it.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. Those memories, they never die. And some of those memories are, sometimes very, very difficult, I mean, even in this house, I remember we got to the point where she couldn't go up the stairs anymore. So we had to take her up the stairs in a wheelchair, and, those horrible, horrific moments that are stored in my mind, but also there are some amazing moments. But I think your experience is similar to mine, and it took me a while to work this out, that part of me had died. I thought, well, she's died. Well, yeah, part of me died as well, the part that was married to her. So it's like, well, who am I if I'm not this person? Right. And I think what you said before we started recording, it's like, who am I? Yeah. Well, you're finding that out.
Well, he took so much of me with him. Yeah. Is how I feel. I feel like, whether he certainly didn't intend to, and also of my other siblings too. He took so much of us with him. Yeah. And it's like, oh Christ, well, if I look down, how much is whole and how much is rich? Yeah. And I know it sounds so needlessly poetic almost, but it's like, well, I don't. Yeah. Where does my grief end and I start?
I think that's what you're finding out. It's forcing you to go within. Like you go within or you go without. Right. Absolutely. But to go within is often challenging, right? Because you have to face things.
The idea of legacy is a fantastic and wonderful one, because obviously Hannah's legacy will be everybody that watches this film, will be everybody that thinks, oh, I should get myself checked. Everybody just hugs their loved one that bit tighter, who loves you, baby. I heard you say that, in the film, and
when she was in the hospice.
When she was in the hospice, and that makes me feel like, as soon as I heard you say that, I was like, is that something you all say?
Yeah, she liked Kojak. I don't know why. Right? She was too young, but I grew up watching Kojak. That whole thing with the lollipop. He used to smoke Kojak, Telly Savalas. Yeah. And he used to, who loves you, baby?
But you said that, and I thought, I bet that's 1,000 millionth time you said that to her.
Yeah, I had one of those lights with letters, and I actually had that on it. Who loves you, baby?
Yeah, I knew, because of course they're the special moments, right? They're the special parts of your relationship that only you can have. And I guess that's why I wanted to start with who was she, and what are the small things you miss about her, because that's what makes a human. It's not this is what they did for a career, or it's the small things, it's the silly things, it's the she laughed when I did this.
Well, she was also had incredible intuition, because I was like 14 years older than her. I often thought stupidly that I knew better, and I realised now that she was always right. She was an amazing. She knew where people were coming from. Yeah. And once again, I just feel that the great fortune of having had her in my life. She used to come in the kitchen and start dancing. I danced with her, but again, I just could have been more present.
When you said that earlier on, and you said it, I heard you say it in a podcast I was listening to with you and Dr. Ray Sylvester as well. You said you wish you'd stopped more. Now I know you talk about stop to think, and that's a part of who you are. But Are those moments not stopping when you dance with her?
No, because I was never really present. I'd always be thinking about, I can't do this for too long because I've got something to do.
Interesting.
So I've spent most of my life probably from the age of very early age. I mean, I was born premature. My mum said I was 6 weeks premature. She said I was in a hurry to come out. I've been in a hurry ever since. So if you look at my life, you see, wow, you're always on.
Well, let's talk through that then. I'm intrigued by your career because you've had quite a public career as, I guess, GMTV's life coach. Is that the people's coach?
Yeah.
Was it you that came up with the people's coach?
No.
Was it them?
That was them. Well, they actually called me the life coach. I was probably one of the first people that
had that.
Yeah, and a personal trainer as well. You know, I tend to have been a bit of a pioneer in different fields.
Because you actually trained we do have listeners obviously in Gloucestershire. You actually did your degree in Cheltenham.
In Cheltenham, yeah, I did a sports science degree. How I ended up getting there, having left school with 1 GCSE. I hated school. I was diagnosed with severe learning difficulties, dyslexia. Okay. At 5, I remember feeling like there's something not quite right here about me. So I got taken out of the class that I was in. I got moved down a class, and I think it just put an idea in my head that, you know what, there's something not quite right about me, and I need validation. I need acceptance. I think we're all born with. This is something that Gabor Mate talks about, who's a brilliant authority on trauma. He's written many books, but one of them is called The Myth of Normal. And he talks a lot about we're all born with the need for authenticity and the need for attachment. But the need for authenticity is kind of sidelined because for the first few years of your life, you have to attach yourself to people to survive.
To survive. We literally can't. You know, we're one of the few species, right, that out of the womb can't survive by ourselves.
Can't survive. We would die within a few hours, right? Mm-hmm. So we attach ourselves to people, and by attaching ourselves, who are we attaching ourselves to, and what are we learning? Because there's no filter, right? Mm-hmm. What are we taking in? What do we learn from the people around us? And obviously, sounds like you grew up in a pretty challenging environment, whereas I grew up in what some people would call a very privileged environment. However, I still was plagued by, a father who definitely, my dad had depression. Not that I ever really knew that. My dad didn't have a good relationship with his dad. My mum was an only child. Her dad was a gambler. Her mum had mental health problems. This they call it intergenerational trauma. What you pick up from others becomes yours. It was never yours, but you pick it up. Yeah. So I picked up their trauma, I'm sure. I picked up some ideas that I'm not enough, there's something wrong with me. And that just, the way I dealt with my own discouragement was to seek validation, make people laugh, try and be the center of attention, put on an act, put on a performance. And I realized that that was never me. It was just, I could do it really well. So people would think that was me. That performance got me on television, wrote 21 books, spoken all over the world, worked with world and Olympic champions in sport. But I was never really happy. I was never really content because it never hit the mark. Because the real mark wasn't anything I was going to do externally. It was always going to be my internal validation system of realizing I don't need anything from anyone. I am enough. I am my authentic self. And it took Hannah to pass, really, for me to face myself. It's funny that you look at, behind the Darth Vader. I don't know if you remember, I think it's in the film The Empire Strikes Back, where Yoda says to Luke Skywalker, go into that cave. Mm-hmm. And, he goes into the cave and he sees Darth Vader and he chops Darth Vader's head off. And when the head's on the floor, he realizes he's looking at himself. Mm-hmm. So, to stop and think often means you have to face yourself. And that can be difficult and challenging because what are you facing? You're facing everything you've been through. And some of that was very difficult and ugly. And I admire anyone that wants to go on that journey to go within. But I think if you don't go within, you're going to go without. Because I don't think you'll ever... I can't speak for everyone, but for me, my journey has allowed me to tap into the essence of who I really am. And that's someone who isn't in a hurry.
But it took you until Hannah's illness and possibly her passing.
Oh, no. Yeah, I mean, when she got sick again, that was a bit of a wake-up call. But
yeah.
The grief. Grief plays out in different ways. The 5 stages of grief, which many people talk about, of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. I don't know if that's the same for everyone.
Yeah.
But I would say, I don't think I've had much anger, denial, bargaining. She ultimately died, I believe it was COVID that really set it all off again.
Yeah.
I gave her that. So I could give myself a hard time about it. Have I been depressed? Yeah. But ultimately, acceptance has come in the form of celebration. You're really here because of her. Yeah. Really, if you think about it. Yeah, I'm going to interview, I will talk about this film. Well, we're celebrating Hannah by...
Absolutely.
We're celebrating my parents. This was their table, that we are standing on the shoulders of giants. I don't know Jordan, but I can feel his presence. I can feel the impact he had on you, and I can feel that you're carrying him with you. You're carrying everything that was great about him with you. Yeah. So you're sharing that with me.
And that's the wonderful thing, is you don't know future legacy. Short to medium term legacy is also important to me in relation to him. And, yes, the podcast might well be a form of legacy, but what else, right? And, for you, there might well be things beyond the film also that that speak to or contribute to Hannah's legacy.
Yeah.
And you don't know them yet. Have you seen Ben West on social media? He's a an anti-suicide campaigner. He lost his brother to suicide 11 years or so ago, I think it was, when his brother was a teenager. And he set up a website called Reasons to Stay, and it's you can write anonymous letters to people, and that might be feeling that they don't want to be here anymore. They go onto the site. Something he also did that is a further aspect of legacy is he said, I'm running the London Marathon. I've got this towel. If you've lost somebody to suicide, tell me their name and I'll get it embroidered on this towel. And it's amazing. 5,000 names ended up getting embroidered on there, including Jordan's. And it's amazing how that's just a small token that allows people to feel seen, heard, and part of a collective. Because the funny thing with suicide is 22 people, the 22 people will take their lives today. That's 22 families that will feel like mine today, and tomorrow, and the day after.
And I don't think that's going to change, unless there's a massive change in society.
My conversation with Dr. Susie Bennett that I mentioned, we got into the hows and into the weeds of maybe how things could change. The support is not there. I called, let's call it a mental health hospital, because that's effectively all it is. It would have been, if we were being derogatory, a loony bin, when we were younger, right? I called a mental health hospital and I said, please help me. He's going to hurt himself 2 days before, maybe even the morning before. And they said, well, is he doing it now? I said, well, no. And he's been through the system. He's had all the therapy in the world. That boy's talked to, I've spent an awful lot of money putting him through these conversations. Is he doing it now? No. I can't help you.
Yeah.
I said, well, what? So you've got to, forgive my being direct, but you've got to wait until the noose is around his neck. At what point is the support here for men that are actively suicidal, particularly men, because, they disproportionately take their own lives. But, let's say for everybody, at what point is that support here? Because then they said, well, you can call crisis, same thing. That's the support that's there to help these people. It's my opinion that it's like, it's just, these people will take their lives anyway. What can we do about it? It's like, I don't believe that's true. I think when you want to take your life, you want to take your life in that moment. You want to be dead in that moment. You don't want to be dead. You want the way that you feel right now to stop. You don't want 5 years future happy me to not be there. You just don't want today to be there. So that's the structure and support that's not there.
Well, that's because we've created a world that is just all about reaction as opposed to responding to a situation. And I'm sure there are people and organisations out there that are trying to respond and trying to get to these people before it becomes something that they don't see any other choice.
Yeah.
And we do live in a very sick society, I just think that the mental health issues are going to exacerbate, but it will take conversations like this.
Yeah.
I would imagine that at least one person has listened to this and it has given them a completely different perspective of where they are, and they might not have taken their life because of this.
I've had lots of lovely messages that speak to exactly that, and I've tried, I don't want to share them necessarily publicly because it feels, obviously that it's not my story to tell. But yeah, I'd hope that this does. But at the same time, I don't want this to be super serious and po-faced and those things. I want to get to a point where, like you can celebrate Hannah. And I worry that I've not been there yet, because the people say that you'll get to the happiness and the loving, lovely memories, and I'm like, well, when and when,
I don't know what happiness means. I just I'm not interested in being happy.
Yeah.
I'm just interested in being at peace.
Yeah.
Making peace with what happens. And I think that's where time is a huge part of it. Definitely talking. I mean, different therapies can be really useful for people for dealing with grief. I worked with a therapist when I knew Hannah was dying, because I'm thinking, I don't know how do I navigate this?
Yeah.
And the therapist actually said, keep talking to her. Yeah. Remember that even when she can't talk, she's still listening. Keep talking. And afterwards, I've gone back a few times and had therapy. But as you know, I've walked with this guy, Dr. Ray Sylvester, for the last 5 years. And he's one of those people that's been with me and just throughout the whole journey. And that's just, I'm very fortunate when you can walk with someone who's there for you unconditionally. And who's walking with you? Who's taking care of you?
My partner, Vic, my friends, guests. I get a lot from these conversations, I think.
So what do you think you need in your life right now in order for you to find peace in what's happened?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that
think
question.
I know, but it's not really for me to say, is it?
What do you think?
If you need to forgive yourself. Yeah. Yeah. Basically. And that's what your brother would say to you. You know?
But it's that thing.
Because of what you could have done or should have said.
Sure.
And I don't think that would have made any difference. I'm sorry to
you
make emotional.
There's a place.
He's so lucky to have had you in. I mean, imagine his life if you hadn't have been there. I mean,
it would have been very different. It would have been very, very different. But
what do you think happens when people go? Where is he now?
I don't know. I'm not a religious man.
What's that got to do with it?
No, that's a very good point. I think we exist in memory, and that's that's powerful, and that's enough for me. Is we exist in memory, and to inspire and support and help others. I don't. Yeah, exactly what you just said there is I need to get past there's a place called James's Place.
Yeah,
that offers immediate support to suicidal men.
Yeah.
I was a Google search and a hotel stay away from maybe that being the answer. And I know it's not necessarily the answer, but it's hard to not tell yourself that, right? It's hard to not sit with that.
It's definitely
because you're
looking for answers.
Because Christ, what did you do? You Googled and found somebody who was controversial, doing something with peptides that was as you say. Was well out of the ordinary. Would Hannah have found that person without you? Right?
No. So there you go.
There's a scene in the film at the funeral where her dad says, "Thank you. You gave her more years than she would have had."
Yeah.
Had you not done that, she would have passed away very likely much sooner.
Yeah, we wouldn't be sitting here in this house because she found this house.
Right.
And there's so many things that have happened.
It's can you forgive yourself knowing that maybe there was that one extra thing you could have done to give that, quality life to that person beyond the point at which they did die? Is there something more you could have done? Because there was, and you did.
Well, unless I find peace in what happened, then I'm going to continue to play it out, and to let go of something like that is a challenge, but it's also a beautiful thing, because when you let it go, you create space for something else.
Yeah.
And I can totally understand if you do feel that you could have, should have, would have. But I think, deep down, you couldn't. There was nothing you could have said or done that would have made any difference. I think somewhere you must know that.
I'll get to it, I hope.
It's already, I'd say it's already there. It's like allowing yourself. I mean, again, please forgive me. I'm not a therapist. Right? I'm a coach. I love coaching people.
We're two men that very rarely do men talk about this sort of thing openly. So, there is some benefit to this for others also. So,
well, you're a man who just bought me some flowers. You're a big strapping, guy from Gloucester, who used to play rugby. Yeah. You bought me some flowers. The flowers, the purple, Hannah's favourite colour. I mean,
that
do you
was
think
to celebrate the film, and
yeah.
also if you didn't want them, they're Hannah's, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So because grief is so, I don't know. I think grief is so painful because you loved. I mean, what people say, why does grief hurt? Well, for me, it hurt because I loved someone, and that love isn't there in the way that it was. I do believe it's there, but it's in a different way.
Well, that's there's a saying that grief is love with nowhere to go. And I quite think that's a beautiful way of looking at it. It's like, okay, well, you feel the way you do because you want to, there's all this love in you for that human, and you can't go to that human being anymore. So where the bloody hell does it go? What do you do with that?
I give it to myself, show love to myself, and then through showing that to myself, give that to other people. I think because it's so painful, we kind of, the way of dealing with it is find another type of pain and the pain of I could have done something different. And it's like, how would your life be if you let go of that? You let go of whatever you would call that thing. Guilt.
Yeah.
Shame. I don't know. What would you call it?
Yeah, no, guilt is right there. Yeah, guilt and like just the hole that's left behind by that human is enormous. And then again, selfishly for me, it's just been almost 17 months now in a few days. It's the response to it. It's the habits that you fall into, the drinking, for me, because my nightmares were and are awful.
Your what?
Nightmares.
Yeah. You still have nightmares?
Yeah, most nights. And I'm trying to be sober. That's the thing, is because alcohol, awful as it might be, bottle of Jack Daniels, a weapon as it might be, stops you thinking. And it's a very blunt tool. And that's kind of the thing that, for the first 6 months certainly got me through, passing out, drinking most nights. Pretty much.
Yeah.
I say most nights, euphemistic. Every night. And that's not fair. Not fair for my partner. That's not fair for my children. It's not
what you
fair.
say it's not fair. It's like you're in pain and you want to get out of pain, and that obviously works on one level.
It does, and that's what I mean by it. And for anybody listening, that is not that is not a glowing appraisal for alcohol. That is not me saying do it. That's me saying it was exactly what I feel like I needed at the moment. That's not, but then that brings with it, obviously, as everybody knows,
of course,
the problems of, I used to train loads. I'm back training now, we're trying to be much healthier. These things don't just happen though, because you can fall and slide and slide and slide, and then all of a sudden you don't know where you are and, which way is up. And it's that Alice in Wonderland kind of, I'm in crazy land and I don't quite know where to go. So this has truly helped me. This podcast has been phenomenal for giving me process, direction, structure. And selfishly, I get to speak to amazing people like you, who've been perhaps through some of the things that I'm going through, or I can just speak to success or adversity, as we said at the beginning, and I get to, okay, that's where the old Rich was. How do I find more of him? And through conversations like this, we exist in dialect. That's the notion that no man is an island. We don't exist, in isolation. How do I better myself through these conversations? Well, have them for a start, put them out there. Maybe they help others too. So that's...
Yeah, I mean, the more I see it, being human, it definitely isn't easy, but it's a lot easier when, you have a reason for getting out of bed every day, and people could call that, your why, your purpose, your who. I know who I am. I know what I'm here to do. You have a reason. And how many kids have you got? 4. Yeah. That's another big reason, isn't it?
It is. And it almost, and again, that's part of the shame and the guilt, is that it felt for a period of time that they weren't enough to lift me up and out of what I'd fallen into. Yeah. And that's awful, because they should be.
You say it's awful. It's all relative. Pain is pain. And if you're in pain, you want to get out of pain. Yeah. But I suppose ultimately it's allowing yourself to feel some sort of pain, but then finding a way. For me, it's been to celebrating in that suffering, and I will continue to celebrate. And that doesn't mean I don't feel guilt. It just means... And, learning to make peace with what has happened is a real challenge. And I think you're still in that challenge.
I do think I'm still working it out. I mean, the other day, my an old kind of player I used to play with got in touch. He plays at the club that Jordan played at, and they'd named a trophy after Jordan, the Jordan Smith Memorial Trophy. And it's an annual thing they're going to be giving to in the youth section, basically clubman of the year. So the person that's gone above and beyond, the person that supported, because that was Jordan, the person that supported the club in a way that's not just playing well, being a good player, whatever it is, asked me to go and present it. And obviously it was an incredible honour to do that, and I know that he'd be proud of that. So it's finding these things, and that's a moment of celebration, but also, it's hard to, it's hard to get to the point of celebration when I don't want to celebrate. I just want him here.
Yeah,
is that how do you reconcile that?
See, that's the thing. For me, Hannah is still here. So
do you think faith plays a part in that? Because I know you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not religious. My friend Dr. Ray is a devout Christian. Sure. I'm not a Christian.
Yeah.
I have a lot of faith. And it's one of the things he encouraged me to do, to lean into my faith. Because, ultimately, we can't tell people. There's nothing worse than telling someone what to do. If someone told me what to do, it's like I'm a rebel.
Yeah.
In fact, my other coach, who died in 2016 when he was alive, he told me once I was like Jesus. I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "What do you know about Jesus?" I actually went. I'm Jewish. I'm brought up as a Jew. Went to a Catholic school, and he said, so I knew a bit about Jesus. He said, Jesus was a rebel. He rebelled against all of the laws and all the ways, and said, "There's got to be." So he found himself, right? And the story is he went to the, in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Everyone has their right to have their own interpretation of the story and what the story means. I'm a rebel like you. I want to find my own way. I don't want anyone to tell me what to do, because if someone tells me what to do, it's not mine.
It's so for my partner. I'm not my real mum. You're not my real what. I say, you can't tell me what to do, and she's like, if I hear you say you can't tell me what to do one more time, obviously I'm joking, but I'm not. No. Like, I need to work this out.
You need to work it out for yourself, and to have faith. Like you obviously do have some faith around. You've spoken from a perspective of faith, from what I've heard around. You put something out there, and you just have faith. Like you put seeds in the ground, and you have faith that it will do it.
The saying is one of my favourite sayings. Is the wise man plants a tree whose shade he knows he'll never sit under.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a beautiful notion. And that, and that. The idea of us, as I touched on earlier on, being specks that don't mean that much but also mean a lot is powerful. So I hold that. Is that faith? I don't know. But when you say you don't think of it as not being here, how do you mean?
Well, again, going back to, I've never spoken about this before. So I had a coach for 16 years. He was from the Philippines. He was a doctor. He worked with World Hunger. He travelled the world living with Indigenous people. And when they were working with Indigenous people, they weren't allowed to interfere. They weren't allowed to say anything. Right. They just could watch and observe. So one of the things he observed everywhere, Indigenous tribes, they'd always sit in circles. They'd always hold space for each other, always put the children in the middle, always listen to the elders. And there was a sense of we are one. We're not, which is one of the biggest issues with society, this individualism, Absolutely. Me. Yep. As Muhammad Ali said, shortest poem in history, me, we. He understood this we. When he fought for everyone. He didn't just fight for himself. Mm-hmm. He wasn't a perfect man, but there's no such thing as a perfect man.
Well, I always bring it back to Martin Luther King Jr. was quite the philanderer. Does that take away from the man he was?
No. Because nobody's perfect. And he actually said, the greatest question we should be asking of each other is, what can I do for you? Mm-hmm. What can we do for each other? He was inspired by Gandhi. Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see in the world, to reinvent yourself. You are reinventing yourself. Yeah. But you could do that, I think, more in a much more cathartic way, because, okay, we'll call it Jordan's memory. Jordan's memory is right here. I don't even know him, but I feel like I know him because of you. Sitting on this table, I used to sit at this place on this table. My mum would be there and my dad would be there. In fact, I would be sitting here, but I can still imagine both my parents. I can see my dad, I can see my mum, and I know exactly what they're saying to me because I still talk to them. I could see Hannah here. You said you're just making it up. Anyone could say, well, you're just making it up. It's a memory. In the Indian system, the chakras, these 7 chakras, I think it's the 3 or the 4th base chakras are earth. And when you die, those elements, they die. But the higher chakras of the throat, the heart, the third eye, they live on. That's what they would say. So just because that person here isn't physically, they're still here in another form. Again, I don't necessarily understand all of that, but I do feel her presence. And do you still dream about him?
Oh,
so when you see him in your dreams, well, what do you see?
I've not thought about that. I've not thought that I haven't seen him in a positive way, and he'd want me to see him in a positive way.
Yeah, so can you not see that now?
Maybe I can. Maybe I can work on it.
Well, even in using your imagination.
Yeah,
I mean, what people often talk about is that when people appear, they will often appear at their best. So I see when Hannah appears, it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
Very rarely does it happen. But when she does appear, it's like she looks like Olivia Newton-John in Grease.
Right.
Without the cigarette. I mean, Hannah used to smoke and she used to drink, but a brain tumour changed that that. Sure. I mean, she never smoked and drunk again.
Yeah.
But, whether that's I've spoken to a lot of people whose partners have passed or their children have passed, and nothing could be worse. See, nothing can be worse, I don't think, of losing a child, right? Yeah. And Hannah's dad obviously lost his daughter. Hannah's dad nursed Hannah's mum for 10 years with dementia. She died in 2016 as well. Whereas I can see how difficult this is for you because you were a father to Jordan. Yeah. So you did lose a brother. You lost a son, really. Mm-hmm. And I can understand how your brain is still making sense of this. So when you think about it, you think of the worst. But there's another version of him that maybe you haven't even engaged with. And that's him just unreal. I mean, what was he like? What was he really like?
Funny. Like such a distinctive laugh. Such a distinctive voice and laugh. Kind, mischievous, vain. Quite somebody that loved my children.
So when I feel his presence, that's the presence I feel. Yeah. I don't feel the presence of someone who took his life.
Yeah.
But I don't know him.
No, you're right. I mean, that's something I try to work on is the...
I wouldn't try and work on it.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't try and work on it. Yeah. And why try? Either, it's like Yoda, try or don't try,
Yeah.
Because I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate it.
I'm not, it's a choice to be able to remember someone in that way. And if you say, well, how would he want you to, and maybe it's just a bit more time that you need, that you will let that memory go. I call them imprints. I used to work with a lot of people who had severe fears and phobias. I don't really do any of that work anymore, but often severe fears and phobias have come about from an imprint, from one thing. Yeah. And then it imprints something in the brain, and the brain doesn't want that to happen, doesn't want to think about it. So it's always there. You're carrying around that image. Mm. But to be able to push that image away, to take the colour out of the pin, because we all think in pictures, I worked with the England blind cricket team. I didn't know that blind people see. Did you know that?
I didn't know that, no.
Well, what do you think they do when the ball makes a noise? Do you think they're just going, shit, I hope I hit the ball? Or as the ball makes a noise, from the noise it makes, they make a visual representation. They don't hold a stick and just hit the stick on the ground for no reason. So it's fascinating how we as humans recall and remember things, and things that are traumatic, we can often store them in such a way that there's some sort of protection. I don't want this to happen. I should carry this with me. But there is a choice that our brain can make, which is like, okay, I can think about him in a different way. As I was listening back to a conversation, it was me doing a podcast 3 years ago, sitting where you're sitting, crying my eyes out 3 years ago, because it took Hannah to have a brain tumour for her to find out who she was. But she ultimately became a victim of where she was, circumstance. And I'd say it was the same with your brother. He became a victim. Maybe a victim is too strong a word, but his conditioning, his environment, ultimately he made decisions based on the back of that, I would imagine. But who he was much deeper than all of that. Yeah, who he was, which you knew, that's never going to die. I would say, I mean, this is, again, it might be a really far out way of thinking, and I totally understand someone who doesn't have the same ideas as me. But when my coach was alive, Raphael, he used to say, what do you think happens when people die? Where do you think they go? And I remember him talking about someone who lost a baby. And he said, what do you think happens to that life? There was a life that was an energy, a life that was going to come, hasn't gone into that physical form. Where do you think it's gone? I was going, I don't know. He goes, well, it's still there. And he said, if people have lost a child, they can still, that life is still there. It's just not there in the physical form. And his advice was to this particular person, acknowledge the life and talk to that life because it's still there. So he would say something, again, very far out there for a lot of people. And forgive me if this triggers people in some way, shape or form. And it's just, maybe it's a fairy tale way of looking at it. But he said, look, maybe some of us, maybe all of us chose these lives. And we were like a bright light. And you had a choice of all these different lives you could take. And you chose this one because it was going to be interesting. It was going to be challenging. You still had choice. But as soon as you entered into the life, you forgot that you took it, and now you're faced with choice. And to respect the choices that people make in life is very difficult, especially when they make choices that you wouldn't make.
Yeah, and I guess I grew up with a lot of my uncle took his own life when he was 29, heroin addict. You know, and it's choices that you just wouldn't otherwise. You're harming yourself. I can see you're harming yourself. Jumping out the window to go and score. When you've been locked in there. I know that harms you, but you're making that choice, so it's like hard to reconcile. It's like, I know that that's not the human being you want to be, but maybe I guess your guy Raphael would disagree. He'd say, no, he chose that. And that was the way
I think he would always say that, that's the thing about being human, ultimately, that we have free will. I think, I don't know, choice. I'm still working stuff out.
Hey, a very quick favour before we move on. Please, right now, subscribe to Project Possible. If you're enjoying it, if you enjoy what we're about, positivity, possibility, success through adversity, right now, please hit subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you are right now, watching or listening, click that subscribe button. It costs nothing. It takes 2 seconds, and it genuinely helps more people find this show, and it helps me get the best guests. So thank you. I'll shut up now. Back to the episode. What made you want to go into what you did? You said you started training, so you trained physical fitness. That's the first thing, right? I think, we understand that if you're physically fit, then it helps then with mental fitness. How did you get to, what's the long road to you right now, 21 books, and how do you look back on that? How do you look back at that kind of 30 years of a body of work?
I look back and think I almost don't recognize the person that I was.
Really?
Because, I don't...
What did you want to achieve when you...
I just wanted validation. I wanted acceptance. And
Did you get that in the first few years of... So you were clearly in good shape. I got here, you were using your red light upstairs, which, concerned me somewhat. I'm not going to lie. I get here and there's a red light on.
There's a red light on. Come in.
Yeah.
So...
Don't worry, the tea's not Rohypnol.
Yeah, I'm just finishing with my client. So... when I left school, I was definitely a bit disillusioned. I did so badly in my GCSEs that they wouldn't let me do them again. So that's how badly I did. I was a bit of a master plan. I thought I'll just fail them so I can do them again. But they said, no, they were so bad that they wouldn't let me do them.
I don't even want to mark them. Don't even want to
mark them. I got a U in English,
That's
unclassified.
impressive. Wow.
Yeah. I still don't have maths or English. I've just got history.
Okay.
So I kind of bluffed my way into a college. Then I applied to university and polytechnics, got turned down from all of them. Back in the day, you had polytechnics, and there was a polytechnics book, and the back there was a list of colleges. Yeah. So there was a college in Cheltenham called St Paul's and St Mary's. Right. I went there. I did a course I did a sports science degree eventually. But
what was that like moving away? So I guess you've lived...
I loved it.
Yeah? Did you want to be? Because, we're talking 150 miles from here. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in northwest London.
Right, okay. So
it's 100
miles. Yeah.
So I grew up... It was amazing being in Cheltenham and for the first time being around people from Gloucester, people from up north. Yeah. But I realised that I was going to leave university with the same qualification as everybody else. So I thought I need to get ahead of the curve. All my life, I was always thinking I need to get ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
But that almost killed me because I did get ahead of the curve. I became a fitness instructor, personal trainer, did a sports injury course, taught classes, had like 3 jobs.
Where were you? Like what gym?
So there was a gym called, originally it was called In Shape, then it was called Ambassadors, then it was Chapel Rock, which is a spa now.
Right.
Worked at the recreation centre. I finished university, I got a job at the biggest gym in Europe. I worked in London, it was called the Barbican.
Right.
I worked 45 hours a week for them.
Well, gym floor or PT?
Both.
Yeah.
No PT. I wanted to PT. There was only one
Right.
PT there. And they said no, and I kept asking. And eventually
So
they said,
you're a
okay.
glorified cleaner, aren't you, at that point, very
Basically
often?
cleaning the
Yeah.
machines,
Yeah,
teaching classes,
Yeah.
cleaning the machines,
Yeah.
teaching classes, cleaning the machines, cleaning the sauna.
Yeah.
And then
I did that, by the way, as well. So
Where
I
did
worked,
you do
I worked
that?
at Virgin Active. Worked
Yeah.
at Virgin for a couple of years. First thing I wanted to do was be, firstly a rugby player. When I had my daughter at 18, as I say, that kind of made that more difficult. But I still stayed in shape, and I thought, well, I'll just train to be a PT, stay in shape, and if I can make it, I'll make it. And it didn't end up happening. I wasn't quite good enough. But the idea was to stay in shape, and the way I could do that was I loved fitness. I've been training since I was 13, 14. Love it. How do I make a career of it? But then the credit crunch came, 2007, 2008, and I lost all my clients very quickly. So I spent 2 years doing that training, doing classes, cleaning, PTing, that sort of thing. So yeah, similar start.
yeah. Well, for me, I wanted a PT, and they eventually said yes, but I had to pay them £300 a month to personal train, and I couldn't do it in my 45 hours. So I was working 70, 80, 90 hours a week, and that became the normal.
Yeah.
They got disillusioned after a bit, went back to Cheltenham, did a postgraduate degree, became a teacher, but immediately didn't like teaching, didn't like schools. What am I doing here? I hated school.
Yeah, you didn't like school when you were there.
Then I started getting the feeling of going back to school and thinking, I really don't want to do this. But at the same time, I still was working in a gym. I created a weight loss program that was about behavioural change because I was really interested in behaviour.
Yeah.
And eventually I sold that business to Bupa in 2003 for a lot of money because they were looking for something to help people with behavior. I've always been interested in behavior.
So talk to me about that. So what, you built a program?
Yeah.
And so what did they buy?
It was an 8-week course.
Right.
They sat down with me for like an hour and a half for 8 weeks. And there was an exercise element, a nutrition element, but mainly it was about how do you change the way you think?
Right.
I've always been interested in thinking.
So they bought a product, but aren't you the product to a degree?
Yes, but eventually we trained people to deliver this program,
Right.
which was fantastic because we were teaching people to be entertainers. Basically, if you want someone to lose weight, and my joy was always when people did it for themselves. It wasn't that my program saved them.
Yeah.
They saved themselves. They came up with their own way. And when it's their own way, it's theirs. They own it.
I mean, I think it has to be that, right? Because fitness, we fundamentally know, and I know people hate the whole calories in, calories out, kind of, eat less, move more notion. Science doesn't change that much over the years. So what has to change is the way that you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, calories in, calories out is not great.
I know it's not, but but
people still go by it, but it's really.
But no, of course, 'cause, 1 calorie is not the same as another calorie, right? We both know that.
Where's the food come from? Who cooked it?
Exactly, but even down to calories from fat are gonna sit differently to calories from protein, right? We know that, and the way the body digests them. But I think fundamentals haven't changed, but the mindsets have to. So people have to get themselves to, okay, well, how do I make this physical change for myself? Well, it has to start up there, top few inches. And that's what you kind of realize, is it, that, I'm teaching people to improve the way they think about this, not just, anybody can say, do 12 reps, get on there for 10 minutes. So what were you teaching that you think other people weren't?
Well, I was always looking for answers. So all the books I've written have all been about, here's a problem, what's the solution? I've always believed that. My mum showed me that way. There's an answer to everything. My dad said it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
So I've always been looking for solutions. So what's the answer to that? What's the answer to that problem? And I haven't stopped. I haven't. That's why I'm now probably more of a better coach than I've ever been, because I'm still learning, and I'm still learning about myself.
Yeah.
So, that program back then was, simple things like getting people to become aware of, when you don't feel like exercise,
Yeah.
that's a normal feeling.
Of course it is.
Why is it a normal feeling? Because we're not designed to move for no reason.
Yeah.
We're only designed to move because there is a reason. And we're actually designed to conserve energy.
Yeah.
So when you think of going to the gym, if you feel like, I don't want to do that, that's pretty normal.
Yeah.
But if you go through that feeling, then actually your brain rewards your body afterwards.
Every time.
So it's getting people just to become aware.
Yeah.
And then they realize, okay, I've got a choice. What choice am I going to make? Am I always going to make the choice I've made?
Yeah.
And then my work has evolved, amazingly into the concept of how we as humans see the future. So in my hallway, there's a picture of me and Ronnie O'Sullivan, 7-time snooker world champion. Ronnie came to work with me in 2002. That picture was taken in 2004 when he won the world title for the second time. He came to me. He was not in a good way. I mean, Ronnie has a very interesting story.
Yeah.
Ronnie's father committed murder when Ronnie was 14. Ronnie's dad went to prison. Ronnie's dad got life.
Really?
In fact, they'd both been in this house. His dad's now out of prison. But when Ronnie came to work with me, it was like I listened to him first because he was not in a good way. And I just listened, created space. He had an appointment for 2 hours. He stayed at my house for 3 days. And I just listened. As much as I want to talk, I realize sometimes just shut up, create space for someone, for him to be heard. And after a couple of days, I said to him, Ronnie, what do you want? And he went, I want to win. Again. I said, how would you know that you had? And he looked at me, what do you mean? I said, how would you know that you'd won? And he said, well, I'd see myself holding the trophy again. I said, is that you in the future or is that you in the past? He went, it's me in the future. I said, how do you know that? He goes, because it hasn't happened yet. I said, oh, so isn't you remembering a memory? And he's pretty good like that he could see a version of himself. So then I said to him, all right, you see that version of you? That's a possibility. There's the man who has a podcast about possibility. That is a possibility. I'd say that version of you, they exist. And I don't know where I remember saying to him, so what's one thing that version of you is doing now that you're not doing? You know what that thing was? Exercising, running. As my dad said, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I moved to that part of Sussex because of a woman called Sally Gunnell, who one of the most successful British female athletes in history. I used to work with her. She was a partner in my weight loss business. I called her up. I said, Sally, can you do me a favour? She said, what? I said, I've got Ronnie O'Sullivan here with me. Would you go for a run with him tomorrow? So she goes for a run with him, and Ronnie hasn't stopped running. Right. So Ronnie invested in a version of himself that doesn't exist, or could exist.
Because it was to ask, what is the future you that's successful doing differently to what you're doing right now?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, because if you... I'm not saying this approach is right for everybody, but it does help a lot of people. So if I'm coaching you, there's me, and then the version of you that we're going to work together for you to become. Obviously, that makes sense in teams. It makes sense in individuals, organizations. Yeah. And that all came back to my coach in 2011 when Hannah was in hospital. I called Raphael, this guy who I worked with for 16 years. I said, what should I do? He said, find people that are still alive with the same brain tumor, find out what did they do. Yeah. I wouldn't have thought of that. But it was the next thing he said, which was just as genius. He said, ask her what she's going to do when she gets better. I said, what do you mean? He said, ask her. But I said, I just told you she's been given 18 months. And he went, so what? People defy the odds all the time. And I didn't ask Hannah that question for 3 years because I wasn't interested in what she was going to do when she got better. I was just interested in her not dying. So after 3 years, he reminded me, I Googled, draw your future. Why? I have no idea. I know exactly where I was, draw your future. If anyone here, when you listen to this, Google draw your future and see what comes up. I'll tell you what comes up. A woman called Patty Dolbovolsky. Don't ask me to spell her surname. She's done 3 TED Talks, and one of those TED Talks is called Draw Your Future.
Right.
I watched it. I showed it to Hannah. Because when I asked her, after 3 years, what are you going to do when you get better? Raphael asked me to ask you that. She started crying. Why was she crying? I didn't know. I think she was seeing a future she didn't want, because we all see a future. All of us do. Everything we do is for the future. What you're doing tonight, what you're doing tomorrow, that version of you exists. For most of us, 6 months down the line, a year, that version doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist, why would we have empathy for a version of ourselves that we don't know exists? So, few people in the world have used that ability to connect to a future version of themselves.
I watched a clip of Jimmy Carr, who, for as funny as he is quite philosophical.
He's very philosophical, yeah.
There was a clip, somebody said, I guess half of his crowd work is silly, your mum things, and half of it is it seems to be this more kind of thoughtful side of him. And somebody said, what's some advice you'd tell a younger you? He said, prioritize later.
Yeah.
Prioritize later. So in everything you do, that gym session you don't want to do, prioritize later. Putting that money away that I want to spend it over here, prioritize later, because later will come for most of us. And that's quite an interesting. And what does later mean? It might mean in 2 hours' time, right? It's prioritize later. So because and then he talks about how hangovers aren't worth it for him anymore. Because
you go to the hangover.
Yeah, you go to the hangover.
So that happens a lot with drug addicts. So imagine someone. Obviously, you've known some heroin addicts. Yeah. So I always admire anyone who comes off heroin, because it's so
enormous.
Addictive. But then they could come off it, go through that horrendous experience, come out. Yeah. And come back into a familiar environment, and someone says, should we do some heroin? And rather than them thinking ahead, they just think of the feeling they're going to have in the moment, which you can totally understand.
Completely
it's an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
Why? Otherwise, why would you do it? Yeah. Again, I don't know for everybody, but for us to be able to stop and think about the consequences of what we're doing, the world is in direct opposition, I believe, for people to stop and think about their lives, where they make a choice that is based on their own well-being, as opposed to, make a choice that will result in you doing something that benefits someone else and results in you thinking, over-consuming,
What was the road from you selling to Bupa through to getting to GMTV? What was that?
I started this weight loss program in a gym in Cheltenham. There were 4 people on the first time I did it. The following week, one person didn't show up. There was 3, but probably like you, I'm a bit relentless. No, I'm going to make this work. Yeah. So I kept going. I decided to write a book. The first book I wanted to write was called A Diet to Die For, and on the front cover for it to say lose 10 pounds immediately, and then open the book up and it'd say, well, $9.99, almost 10 pounds. And the publishers when I got a publisher, they said, you can't call it that, it's too negative. So I wrote a book called Slimming with Pete, a small publisher in Wales.
Did I see it?
Yeah,
in the
you
studio?
saw it. Yeah.
I did.
And
how old were you?
Then I was 28, maybe. Right. And there was a woman who used to review books in the Sunday Times. So at that time, diet books reviewed in the Sunday Times, you could guarantee you were going to sell a few hundred, a few thousand. Yeah. So I contacted this woman, and I don't think she'd met any of the authors that she reviewed books. She met me. She wrote the most incredible review. She said, by the end of this book, you'll be in danger of changing your eating habits, and found out you're a pretty wonderful person. That was the beginning of something amazing, because the book just literally started selling, and had hundreds of people coming to my events. Random House then emailed me and offered me 25 grand for my next book.
Right.
I can't even read and write properly. But
this is for somebody that got a U in English.
I still don't have
a U in English and
a grade 5 in maths.
Well done, you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. But it
just proves there's not a direct path. There's not a path. This trodden for everybody, right?
Well, as you were talking about before, all these things that you've learned. I think you should do something about a podcast about all the things that you've learned from all the people you've interviewed so far.
Yeah,
I think that could even be a book.
I've been thinking about doing a book called Anything Is Possible, and it's lessons from Anything Is Possible, and it's lessons from the people I've spoken to so far.
Yeah.
There's so much knowledge and wisdom in the conversations I've had from every incredible person.
And you've got
I've spoken
100.
to.
100's a good number, and you could dedicate that to the memory of Jordan, because I don't think any of that would have happened.
That's been it's funny. I spoke about this. The second I thought about that book, that was one of the first times that I have spoken about this on the podcast, and maybe written about it. But the second I thought about Anything Is Possible, that book, that was like, oh shit, there's Rich, because I have written a PR book and it did become a bestseller in the space, and did very well. That doesn't accidentally happen. We know that, but it was this that made me go, oh shit, there he is.
So let's just, Anything Is Possible. I want to know what that means.
Yeah.
I just want to just let you know that in my 20s, when all of this started happening, because of the way I was living my life at this most relentless pace, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue and ME.
Yeah.
And I had that for 10 years, and it was horrendous. So on the outside world, it looks like everything I was doing was turning to gold. Inside, I wanted to die. There were days I told my mum, I want to go to sleep. I don't want to wake up.
Yeah.
I'm sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. And of course, I don't think I ever would have taken my life, but I definitely thought about it because I didn't see a way through what was going on. But ultimately, obviously, I did find a way, and I don't choose to live my life that way anymore.
So it then became books. So Random House offered you that 25 grand.
Then
you wrote books.
HarperCollins, and then on TV, and then I had my own TV show on Discovery. Speaking all over the world.
So GMTV, how did that crop up? Because that's quite a...
Amanda Ursel, who reviewed the diet book, was on GMTV. Right. They were doing a new strand called Inchloss Island, which was a bit like before The Biggest Losers. Again, we were pioneers. Yeah. And they were looking for someone to do the kind of mindset sort of stuff. So there was 3 of us. We started off in Burr Island in Devon. We did it there twice. We went to Mallorca. We went to St. Lucia. We went to Mauritius. I mean, so fortunate. Yeah. So fortunate. But the saddest thing about all the things I did is I was never really there to appreciate them in the way I could have. I could have been more present. I was always thinking it was run out. I'd always thinking I'd be found out. And now,
presumably at this point you're on good money, you are ostensibly successful, right? Outside looking in, somebody goes, that Pete, he's doing bloody well. He's earning good money. I saw a video of you and some budgie smugglers that I think were your dad's at some point.
That was a great moment because I was wearing my dad's Union Jack Speedos, and my dad thought he'd thrown them away. And he had them in 1977.
It's like, bloody hell, that's where they've gone.
Yeah, well, my dad watched it and was watching me. My parents were so proud of me watching me live on television. But success to the outside world. But as someone very famous once said, success without fulfillment is failure. I'd say success without contentment is dangerous.
Yeah.
Why can't we just feel content for no reason? Why do we have to do something, achieve something?
Yeah.
Why can't we just be content?
Because our time is finite, I guess, and that's the
How old are your children?
As I say, my eldest is almost 20, and my youngest is 2.
Yes, so 2-year-old's pretty content.
Yeah,
right. So. And then when he or she, when she's not, she'll let you know.
Oh Christ, doesn't she? Yeah.
But she's content.
Yeah.
So contentment again is a choice.
Yeah.
But it goes totally against society because society says you can't feel content. You need all of these things.
It's funny because I feel like we're quite similar in that we chased after success to make us feel a particular way that eventually when you get there you realise it doesn't make you feel. None of that success meant a damn thing. None of it. The first million, the first, that successful book, whatever it is, doesn't mean anything. It's that you thought it would.
Yeah.
And that's that sounds such a dickish thing to say because people would be like, I'd still like a bit of money. I'd still like, I'd still like to have, I'd like that. It's like, sure, those things are lovely, but they're just, it's just like, badges on a drab coat,
Yeah.
Like it's still a drab coat, what's the, you can, roll a turd in glitter. It's still a turd. That's when you feel that way.
I think if you're in pain, when I was in pain, didn't even realize I was in pain. I want to get out of pain. So I'm looking for something to relieve the pain.
Yeah.
And a lot of that relief was striving towards something, being in survival mode, not even realizing it, mild state of anxiety, which I can still get into that state really easily.
And we're not supposed to be, you said earlier on that we're supposed to conserve energy, right? We're not supposed to be in fight or flight constantly. We're not supposed to be there. But, when you're dealing with somebody that wants to actively end their life and you know it, and that's over a period of time, and you're constantly in it. I'm constantly now even worried about phone calls. If my phone rings, genuinely, I first go to, that's not a good call. Every time, that's not a good call. I know it's not. And then you have to think, well, maybe it is.
I can relate to that. I mean, for years, if Hannah called me, I'd think, fuck, that something's, sorry to swear. Something really bad has happened. And
I knew you'd be able to relate.
Yeah, and that I can really, I suppose that's so challenging because you're living in a state of change and uncertainty.
And we're not supposed to live in that.
No.
But you met Hannah in 2010. And it was the Icelandic ash cloud. You were in an airport.
Yeah, we were in an airport. She thought I was a bit of a dick in Ted Baker. The next day she sees me on stage. The ash cloud grounded us.
Yeah.
And
she saw you on stage?
The next day.
I
was speaking at an event the next day.
And that's where she was?
Yeah, she was a participant and I was a speaker.
So what do you mean she thought you were a dick in Ted Baker?
Because I was in the queue and I was in front of her and I saw this belt to my left, so I kind of stepped away like that to look at this belt, and of course she's behind me, so I'm kind of, am I in the queue, am I out of the queue? Right. So I was trying to stay in, but I just turned to her and said, oh, sorry, you better go in front of me, because she looked at me like, what? And then I said my dad would be really disappointed if I jumped back in, and she thought this bloke's an idiot.
I mean, that's quite a chivalrous thing to do. To step out, and
but I do say some strange things, like saying me about my dad.
But was she pretty?
She was. And then the next day, I get on stage. There's a few hundred people there, and I see her, the first person I see. And if it hadn't have been for the ash cloud, we would have. It was another stop moment. Yeah. These stop moments. Someone said to me, I was in Cannes working not long ago, and someone said to me, we're all being called to something. And if you don't answer the call gets louder and louder and louder. What are we being called to? I don't know. I know you're being called to something and you're answering the call in doing...
Trying to do something. And...
No, you're not trying. You're doing... Look, you said, have you tried to do 100 podcasts?
No,
true. You've done it. Has it been easy? Probably not.
Yeah.
But it's not something you've tried to do. It's trying to figure out where that all goes. Well, it sounds like you've already figured out part of it, which I'm going to write a book. So the thing about, if you did write a book, by the way, all the people that have contributed to the book, if, I'm sure a lot of them would say, well, what can we do to help you get the book out there?
Very true.
I was actually going to say, what do you think the legacy of you and I coming together is? What do you think my legacy might be? What do you think I'm going to take away from this?
I think, just in the moment, the book is something that jumps out.
I'm going to hold you accountable for that.
That's an interesting
thought. That's the first thing. But the second thing is I take away your brother.
Yeah.
I feel his presence in me, and I will take his presence wherever I go, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Because I get the sense that he was an incredible human being who obviously had a tough time, but he did well to get to the point that he must have got in his life. And his life lives on in you, in me, in whoever you choose to share it with. We carry people. I think we have. I don't understand this necessarily, but my dad, my mum, and Hannah, and other people. My friend Ian Phillips, who's not here anymore. I'm still imagining him here. They would only want one thing for me, which is to. Obviously, it sounds ridiculously obvious. Enjoy life while you're here. Be a good person. And remember, I'm always here with you. Always. You're never on your own. They're always here. Sometimes I forget how lucky I am that they were in my life. But just because they were in my life, does that mean they're still not here? What? You could say their memory is still here. How do I remember them? Well, I don't remember them in the way. I can still, if I want, I was at an event the other day and people said, close your eyes and think of something difficult. Not a good thing to say to someone. You be careful when people tell you things like that. Think of a difficult moment or a hard moment. I pictured Hannah in the hospice.
Sure.
Basically emaciated. Did I want to think about that?
No.
No. It was a choice. I still made that choice, but you know what? I could put that image away and see someone and remember her in her laughing Olivia Newton-John sexy beautiful way, and that's how she would want me to remember. She wouldn't want me to remember her like that. Those memories will still come because the brain is the mind is an incredible thing. The mind it creates illusion, it creates dysfunction. In Buddhism they call it dukkha. Hinduism, they call it Maya. In Christianity, they call it the original sin. It's what's your mind. Your mind will play tricks on you, but who's in control of your mind? That's why if you stop to think, you can start to observe what your mind is doing and realizing, oh, there's a choice here. That's what I want. Part of what I want to share with the world is you can, but you've got to stop. You've got to step back. Know yourself. Know how your past is informed. Know how your biography has affected your biology, right? That was Dr. Ray that said that actually to me. It's like, wow, my biography has affected my biology in such a way that I can get stressed really easily. I can worry. I can know thyself. Know that you are more, I'd say you and me, we're more than all of our experience because we're still here.
Yeah. What did creating the film, the premiere the other day, watching people watch it, what did it teach you about love?
Well, some people ask me what is the film, and I'd say it's a love letter between the two of us because it was love that, to be honest with you, I didn't think I'd be with Hannah. I didn't think I would spend the rest of my life with this person. But when, I'd always avoided relationships.
Mm.
I had some pretty destructive relationships in terms of, I don't know how I played them out, but her having a seizure and then being in such a vulnerable place where no one else could, I had to step up, and go back to the first thing we talked about. I had to become her hero. It was funny because all the relationships I've ever been in, I felt like I'm trying to rescue this person. She didn't need me to rescue her in that way.
Yeah.
Obviously, in this way, she did. So the film is a love letter, and it was amazing for me to sit in a room, in an auditorium, on a big screen with a whole group of people, many of them I know, to look at this love letter. And already, there's probably a couple hundred people now that have written something about how the film impacted them because, again, going back to the point we made before about a film, I don't want this to be something that people watch and then they forget it. I want it to imprint something inside them where their life will never be the same again because of that film. Whether that's one person or 1,000, I have no control over that.
What do you think the future impact of the film will be?
The future?
The impact of the film. Obviously, it's available online. Do you think that there's going to be further distribution? Do you think, when you think of like it in its biggest form, how many people do you think it can actually reach?
I don't know. I'm not.
It's not for you to think.
It's not for me to decide. You could say what it is, but for me, it isn't. I was talking to someone this morning about streaming it in such a way that people can pay to watch it, and the money that it makes would all go to the organisation that we support in Uganda. So I might do that. But in the work I do moving forwards, I would imagine I would be encouraging people to, if they feel that they can do it, to stop and take a moment to watch this film. But it's going to move people in different... What did it do to you?
It did move me, yeah, of course, because, it makes you... most people have been in love. And fundamentally, it's wonderful to hear you call it a love letter because it's the depths and, the extent to which you will go to for somebody you love. And also how obvious it is the love coming back the other way. Yeah. That's what I saw. I saw two people in love. That's what I saw.
Well,
and how cruel can it be and how sad is it that that's that doesn't exist in the form that it did anymore. That's kind of... you know, and how finite that, you know, yeah, it makes me think about things being finite, and, you know, yeah, hug that person that bit tighter, you know, that, you know, which, you know, I mean, there was a point at which she's turned away and she says that everything's pointless.
Yeah.
Do you remember that point? And like, what do you feel like, yeah, what do you think when you think of her saying everything's pointless? Did you ever
what she
feel
said
hopeless?
after that, which was, I've just got to get on with it.
She did. That's very true.
You know,
I mean, she was so stoic about.
Oh, but I mean, this is when you often see the best in people in a crisis.
Yeah.
And her knowing that a lot of people were following her, even back then.
Yeah.
I've got to just get on with it. And that was one of the big things that came out of it. Just get on with it. But just get on with it is limited, because just get on with it is relentless. Just get on with it. Just get on with it. Whereas now it's more about just go with it. Just go with it in terms of you don't have to push. Just go with it. Allow things to happen. And I think that was more of who Hannah actually was. I think how she survived was I've just got on with it. But when she got better after 2011, you know, she did her best. In the back of her mind, she hated having seizures, but she still had a few, and she got stressed sometimes. And I was responsible, I think, for, you know, and I think of that stress and how she'd collapse and have a seizure and think, oh my God, look what I did. Stress is really not good for most people. But I'm so glad that I'm able to share. What an honor to be able to share this with the world, because we're all in the story making business, right? This is a story. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone's going to listen to this and they're going to be moved by this conversation, and they might choose something different on the back of it. Well, we know what you're going to do, right? You haven't got a choice now, because you've said it again about a book. So for me, you say that book already exists. I don't know what it looks like, but you're already looking at it.
Yeah.
What's it look like? You're looking at a book.
I've already started piecing it together. Can I ask you a potentially difficult question? We've been talking about love. Do you think you could ever love anybody again in the way?
Well,
that
it's
you
funny
loved
you
Hannah?
think about that, because I was just thinking about it. So there you go.
In what sense?
I wonder why you asked that question. Were you planning to ask the question?
No, it's not written here.
No. So I'm just
no.
saying. I was just thinking that
Right.
before you said it.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Interesting.
So did you pick up on that? Who knows?
Maybe.
Who cares?
Yeah.
So yes, I can, and I've actually been seeing someone now for a few months, and it's fascinating because I met her a year ago, March last year, and we went out on a date, and then she said she contacted me and said I can't something like I can't see you again, or I don't want to see you again. So I thought, okay, fair enough, and just put that to bed. Like rejection, I didn't take that too well, but you know, when you've been through what we've been through, you seem to be able to get over most things, right?
Yeah. I mean, my tolerance for rejection is incredibly high through working in PR. My first ever phone call to a journalist was a guy called Charles Arthur at the Guardian, technology journalist. I pitched him. I remember the call. In fact, it was a company called Say It When. Say It When was a company, first ever thing, like so weird. It was a kind of digital repository for audio, video, pictures that you would put in there, and then upon your death, it would be released to your family. Nice. So sayitwhenyou'regone.com or whatever it was. It doesn't exist anymore. I have looked. So that's quite funny that, you know, relates to both of us in that sense. Picked up the phone to Charles Arthur at The Guardian, renowned for being, I didn't know this at the time, my boss was like, oh yeah, Rich, I think Charles should be the first person you call. Picked up the phone, did my little pitch. He went, oh, do fuck off.
Yeah.
That's and I laughed. I was like, you fucker, to my boss. And he's there wetting himself. Rejection is like, you know, every day 1,000 times in PR, because you're picking up, you never, you're speaking to GMTV. Oh, hey, I've got, Pete Cohen, he does X, Y, Z. They go, cool.
Yeah.
It has to land in the right way. And it's, so rejection is something I'm very, very fine. I'm absolutely fine with. Yeah.
You could probably teach people how to deal with rejection, because, rejection hurts. It's one of the things I looked at years ago. Why does rejection hurt? Well, if you ever felt rejection, that was a sign you needed to wake up, because we all lived in tribes. And if you were rejected, you wouldn't survive.
Social ostracism is massively, exactly.
Well, it's the same with shame as well. I think it's normal to feel a sense of shame, but not to let these things rule your life. Just going back to what you said, so this girl then contacted me. Yeah, she got in touch a year later. She sent me a song, Dido, White Flag. And at first I thought, who is this? Because I've completely forgotten. And we started seeing each other, and I've now been seeing her for 5 or 6 months. And I've been very quiet about that, for a few reasons. But she's lovely, and there's a real opportunity to be present with someone in a way, because I wish I'd been more present with Hannah.
Sure.
What
does it throw up for you? What does it?
It shows what it brings up is love. That love is everything. To live and to have not loved is to. I don't know what that expression is.
Yeah.
But I'd rather have lived and loved than not loved at all. Mm-hmm. So I did love Hannah. Of course I did. She was the most incredible human being. She loved me. I didn't appreciate the love that she had. I probably didn't allow her to love me in the way that I could have, because I probably didn't think I was worthy of love. I was just too busy. So now I've got this opportunity to love in a way that I've never loved before. So, and that's another celebration of who Hannah was, because if it wasn't for Hannah, this lady wouldn't be. I'd still be married. Yeah. So I have this wonderful opportunity to be happier, more contented, more loving, and to receive love. I didn't realize what it's really like to allow myself to be loved by another human being who just wants to love me.
Did you think that you wouldn't? Let's talk about the aftermath of.
Yeah, no, I definitely thought. I was definitely a thought that how could I be with someone else? I had to grieve, but I still wanted someone to take my pain away. And then I realised, it would be nice to share my life with someone. And I talked to Hannah about it. I still do, and she says, just be everything you can be, and treat her the way she should be treated. With kindness and love. And so it's a new chapter, and I'm going to embrace it.
I'm intrigued. And, I said at the beginning, if you don't like something that I ask, we can take it. But how she responded to, / how she dealing with the Team Hannah, the video, the fact that so much of your life is in reference to the memory of Hannah.
Well, It's been interesting, and mainly not because of her, because of me, because it's like not wanting to do the wrong thing,
right?
But the film premiere was kind of a seminal moment. I can't see that happening again, So it might. So it was almost something I had to do, and to let it go, and wherever it goes is wherever it goes. Wow. I'm not focused on that now. Even though we're talking about it, but it's not like, there's another premiere, there's another TV interview. It's like, there's none of that. If it comes, it comes. I'll take it.
What was the moment? Was there a moment where you were alone at or after the premiere, like the night of, where you just took a step back and kind of let that go?
Probably the next day, because I didn't get home till very late. It was amazing. We had a wonderful after party. There were people from all my walks of life. It was just beautiful. Because of the heat, the trains were delayed. I didn't get home till 2:30. I still woke up at 4:30. I wasn't going to go back because there was another showing, but I just thought, no, I'm going to spend the day on my own. Yeah, there was some interesting feelings of a little bit of an anticlimax, but not much. Yeah. Not much, because but I just reflected on this wonderful experience of sharing an experience with other people, because a lot of people were really moved by it, and lots of people have told me how moved they were.
Was there a moment in the film, without wanting to ruin it necessarily, but was there a moment where you could feel as a collective that audience felt something?
Yeah, I think there were quite a few, but one of them was there were lots of laughters, because Hannah was very funny. So like, I was driving in Texas, and I'm driving with the camera in my hand, and I said something like, how do you feel about this? And she goes, well, something like, you're going to kill me, because you shouldn't be driving. And everyone started laughing, and they could see how funny she was, and when Hannah's dad went, so when, that bit when we phone up because Hannah's tumour's shrinking.
He's like, fuck it up, fuck it up.
He doesn't realise he's being filmed.
Yeah, of course.
He was quite embarrassed about that.
Because he's trying to articulate, and I love that. And sometimes that's perfect articulation of how you're feeling. Is fuck it, fuck what, fuck.
Yeah. And everyone is laughing.
That was real.
It was real. Everyone was laughing.
Like, you don't need some bloody eloquent, movie ending kind of, soliloquy. You need real, and real was in that moment. Where's he from, by the way?
Originally from Guildford.
Right. Okay.
So it's not far.
I loved it. That made me laugh as well.
Well,
and there's another bit where she basically says, "Nobody's listening to you, Pete."
Yeah. Not anymore. Not anymore.
Like, it's like you've had your time on TV, mate. Nobody's listening to you anymore. Like the humour definitely came through.
And that's part of how I think that's how I really fell in love with her. I fell in love with her because we went on this journey together, and I fell in love with her because I got to know who she really was. It's funny how you often get to know someone, and often you get to know someone through what's difficult.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I could have dealt with it the way that she did. I don't know. But boy, how brave was she to have an 8.5 hour operation on her brain, to have radiotherapy, her hair to fall out. Yeah. After all of that, then to go to America and go on this treatment for 18 months where she'd had this fluid going into her body. It was really challenging to have anti-seizure medication. Just so lucky to have this person in my life.
What would you say to somebody who's listening, watching, that is in the middle of something that feels impossible?
It's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to struggle. It's okay to feel helpless, but don't be afraid to reach out to someone for help. I have a friend who I think you should interview, a guy called Billy Schwer, who is a former world champion boxer. Unreal story, unbelievable story, and he works for one of those organisations where people can phone up who are not in a good place. Yeah. And those organisations exist. I even spoke to someone from one of those organisations because at the beginning I was completely helpless. I don't know what to do. But you know what? As much as sometimes we don't like asking for help, a lot of people actually do like to help, but we have to ask. People aren't coming for you in many cases unless help. Have you seen those? There's two amazing football one's done by Norwich City.
I have seen it. In fact, something you said earlier made me think about it.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as well.
The one where the guy
who's making loads of noise.
Making loads of noise, and it's so just for context for people watching, listening, there's an ad by Norwich City where it's basically one guy who looks thoroughly depressed and continually looks thoroughly depressed. Maybe it's because it's Norwich City, who knows? Yeah. But his mate next to him, he's the one cheering, giving it beans. And then there's a scene that, it moves on to the guy that was depressed is sat there alongside an empty seat. And it was the guy that was all gregarious that ended up taking his life. And the theme, the notion is that, it's always, it's not always the people that are outwardly, visibly struggling.
And then Brighton did a similar one. You obviously haven't seen that. And the two guys go to watch Brighton, and they meet at the train station, and the guy goes, "Are you all right?" And he goes, yeah. And they just carry on. And the game starts, and the guy's shouting stuff out, like I'm struggling, but you think he's shouting out something that's related to the football. And then they walk home, and the guy goes, "Are you all right?" And the guy goes, "No, not really." And they start having a chat. So you ask me, what can we do? It doesn't take much to ask someone, are you okay? Yeah. People talk about that a lot when it comes to mental health.
Yeah.
Do you need anything from me? Is that?
I think that's a good question to ask, because, anything I can do for you right now. Because, post-grief, and you'll know this, I've had so many people message me in recent months, in fact, and say, I didn't know what to say at the time.
Yeah.
It's like anything.
Yeah. You don't have to say anything.
Send me a thumbs up. Send me a full stop.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, genuinely, if you sent me, some of these people would have sent me a full stop.
Yeah.
Then I go, thank you. Because just to know that they've made that connection, they're like, it's probably quite scary at that point to reach out to somebody that's in the depths of grief and potentially tragic grief. And you go, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to say it. So
I just want you to know I'm here.
Lovely. That means a bloody world. It really does. And anybody listening, watching, if you've got somebody now that's just lost somebody, send them a full stop. Send them a heart. Send them something.
And tell them that you sent them.
Yeah.
Rich sent me. And then send them a podcast.
Send them, exactly. It matters. It makes an enormous difference. No, thank you, Pete. This has been amazing, man. I feel like we could keep talking forever.
Well, the conversation doesn't have to end. When this goes out, obviously I'm going to share it with the world because I really appreciate what you're doing. I think, possibility is what life is. Life is just full of possibility. Well, but to explore possibility often means a conversation, to explore what's possible. Yeah. But work it out for yourself is pretty difficult.
The thing, possibility to me is, it might not be something you're capable of today, tomorrow, next week, next year, next decade. But if you want to push towards something, you've got to appreciate there are going to be challenges along the way. There's a book by Hans Rosling, I don't know if you've seen Factfulness, and it's a book that basically says our media diet tells us that the world is the worst place. It's in a worse place than ever. It's not. Infant mortality is down. Child disease in third world nations is down. Hunger isn't what it was. In all these kind of provable statistical ways, life is better than it's ever been for the majority of people on this planet. And his whole thing is, I'm not an optimist, I'm a possibilist. It's optimism without the blinkers on.
Yeah.
And I like that, the notion that I say that people listen to this are possibilists. Yeah. It's everybody wants to be a possibilist. It's not about it being half full or half empty. It's okay, what's truly possible? And I ask everybody, and I wonder what you're going to say. Actually, something you said right at the beginning. Ask everybody to complete this sentence for me, if you can, please. And it's anything is possible if. And I wonder what you feel about that. How would you complete that sentence?
Anything is possible if you stop to think. Yeah.
On brand. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. Well, stop is just to spend the out-of-date performance, and to think is to separate yourself from the thing that's possible, and to start. Because you're only going to see that it's possible by stopping to actually think about it in a calm space. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you might come up with an idea, but you'll just talk yourself out of it. So anything is possible if you stop to think.
Love it. Well, thank you, man. It's been a lot of fun. Where can people go to watch the film?
Teamhannah.com.
Teamhannah.com. And to follow you,
I'd go to just Team, because if you watch the film, we'll email you. And then we'll probably encourage you to listen to the Stop to Think podcast. Yeah. But that's it. I've got nothing to sell or just to share. So, thank you. It's been emotional.
It's been. I kind of thought and knew it would be. I think we talked about more about Jordan than I thought we would. So thank you.
Yeah.
It's lovely because as time goes on, and you'll know this, those conversations stop, the questions, how are you, do stop, those. So thank you for, it's only because of your grief and you've taken some time to understand yourself that you're asking questions that maybe you wish people asked of you, I don't know. But I've been a bit more reflective about him than I've been maybe in a long time. So thank you.
Yeah. I just think he's always with you. I mean, Michael Jordan used to say when he was, when Michael Jordan's dad died, he'd actually given up basketball and started playing baseball, and he's driving to the games and he's talking to his dad. His dad is not there in the physical form, but his dad is always with him, and he talked to him.
Yeah,
and
I messaged Jordan the other day. I talked to, so there was a physical talking to, but also I messaged him, and of course he recognised that it's going to be single tick, and that's all you're going to get. But
well, there's a series on Netflix at the moment. Someone was telling me about it. I'm going to watch it. It's about someone whose sister dies and she carries on sending messages to her sister.
Really?
Yeah. And it's intrigued me enough to actually want to watch it. And someone's listening to the messages or reads the messages and falls in love with the person that's sending the messages. So,
that's interesting.
I wouldn't stop doing that. I think that should also be part of your healing, is just message him.
It's funny because it's the moments that you otherwise would have spoken to that person, isn't it? And you're desperate to tell them, something that happened or something silly or something somebody said. And it's like, you in the first few months, it's you go to do it out of habit.
Yeah.
And then you realise, okay. But then, for me, it very often was late night, a few whiskeys in, I'm going to talk to you. But latterly, more recently, it isn't that at all. It's, I say it because it feels like just it's putting something in the, it's putting something out there.
Well, he's so proud of you. People say he would be. I'd say, why would be? He is. He is so proud of you because of you're here now, and look what you've done on the back of that. Yeah. All these conversations, all the people you've met.
And likewise, I'm sure that Hannah is.
Yeah.
I know you know that, so.
Well, she always used to say to me, you don't need to worry. Everything's going to be okay. Yeah. Just, she desperately wanted me to be present.
Yeah.
She craved that, but she never forced me. She never had a go at me about it. And it's not a regret. It's now the art of the possible that I can do something different. And that's what I try to do every day. So until next time, mate, when you're on my podcast.
Talking about the book.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, get it done. Yeah, when it's done, we'll get it on the podcast for sure.
Mate, this has been wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers, man. Appreciate it. And we're back. What a boy. That was Pete Cohen, guys. I know it wasn't a normal interview. I, as I say, went there to talk about Hannah's story, and I left with Pete asking me questions that I probably needed to be asked. So, that's a guy that's done 30 years of this. So I really enjoyed that. Enjoyed is a weird word to use, isn't it? But I hope you got something out of it too. If it touched you in any way, then please feel free to share it with somebody that might also need it, that might also take something from it. And if you're struggling, talk to somebody. I know everybody always says this, but you don't have to do anything alone. You really don't. You might feel like you do, but you don't. You can watch Hannah's story at teamhannah.com. It's free. Sign up. It's amazing. And as always, I'll be back next week with another fantastic guest. In the meantime, stay strong and speak soon. Bye.